What is tort law? Tort law is an area of law that protects people from other people's negligent actions. Its purpose is to make sure that the victim is compensated for any losses caused by the wrongdoer's violation and to discourage them from making the same violation in the future. Some common examples of tort are negligence-based claims such as car accidents, construction accidents, medical malpractice, and slip and falls. Other examples of tort are civil assault or civil battery, wrongful death claims, trespassing, products liability and dangerous products, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. But what is negligence? To prove negligence, you will need evidence that someone owed you a duty of reasonable care and then breached that duty, which caused your injuries. For example, a shop owner mopped the floor and did not put up a wet floor sign. Then, you slipped, fell, and got injured. The owner could be considered negligent because the owner owes a duty of care to their customers to keep the store safe, but they did not perform their duty, which resulted in an injury. Torts may be classified into intentional torts, unintentional torts, and strict liability torts. Battery is an example of intentional tort. Negligence in a slip and fall case, on the other hand, is considered to be an unintentional tort. There are remedies available in a tort case. If you are a victim of tort, then you may be entitled for monetary damages awards for your economic losses. You may also receive damages awards for other related losses, such as emotional distress, pain and suffering, lost wages, or other costs. If the tort is ongoing, like a store unable to open for business due to construction next door or cannot be remedied with money, then the court may order an injunction. This forces the wrongdoer to do something to remedy the situation. For instance, the court may order a company to clean up after causing a toxic spill, or force the construction to temporarily or permanently stop. You may also be awarded punitive damages, if the offense is really damaging or particularly offensive. This is an additional monetary compensation meant to punish the wrongdoer, and is awarded with the discretion of the court. Some states, however, may limit the amount, and will cap it at more than 2 or 3 times the amount of your economic losses. There are a lot of things to consider in a tort law claim. They may vary according to jurisdiction, so it's important to check with a knowledgeable personal injury lawyer if you are unsure of the laws of your area.
How does a bill become law? Well, a bill first originates in either one of Parliament's 2 houses, the Senate and the House of Commons. At the beginning of the process, the bill is assigned a letter and a number. If it starts in the Senate, it gets an S. If it comes from the House of Commons, it's assigned a C. So, Bill S-201, for example, started in the Senate, but Bill C-46 came from the Commons. Here's how a Senate bill goes through Parliament and becomes law. Stage 1 is called first reading. This is where the bill is first introduced and distributed to senators. The next stage is second reading, which provides senators with a chance to discuss the scope and the principle of the bill. If the bill is adopted at this stage, it is sent to a Senate committee for further study. During the committee stage, the bill is sent to a committee, a group of a few senators who call in experts and people who may be affected by the bill to provide analysis and insight. Committee members study the bill in detail, line by line, and suggest changes, called amendments, where needed. The bill then moves to the committee report stage. If the committee recommends amendments, a report setting out and explaining the amendments is debated in the chamber by all senators. The next step is third reading. At this stage, any senator can propose more changes or speak about the bill. At the end of this stage, senators vote on the bill. If it passes a vote, the bill is sent to the House of Commons, where it goes through a similar process. The Senate and the House must pass the bill in identical form if it is to become law. So if the House makes amendments of its own, the Senate has to vote on them. The Senate and the House exchange messages until both chambers agree on what should be in the bill. Once the 2 chambers agree, the bill is ready to become law. The final step is royal assent, which is granted by the monarch or designate, usually the Governor General. Most of the time, royal assent is given in Rideau Hall, where the Governor General lives, or at a special ceremony in the Senate chamber. And there you have it. That is how a bill becomes law. To find out more about the Senate, visit sencanada.ca.
So where did tort law originate from? Back in ancient Greece, there were 2 people who wrote specific penalties for each type of crime. They were both known as Draco and Solon. For most cases, they deemed it fit that giving money to the victim was the best judgment for the crime. This is where we got the idea of compensating the victim with money, like civil law today. For example, the penalty for a theft depended on the original amount that was stolen. If your dog bit your neighbor, you might be asked to give up your dog with a wooden security collar wrapped around its neck. Solon also wrote laws for the placement of houses, ditches, and water wells. There are even laws to determine the placement of beehives
In
and
this
trees.
video, we'll have a look at Donahue and Stevenson. On the evening of 26 August 1928, Mary Donahue went to Wellmeadow Cafe in Paisley, Scotland, with her friend. The friend ordered a pear and ice for herself and a Scotsman ice cream float, a mix of ice cream and ginger beer, for Donahue. The owner of the cafe brought over a tumbler of ice cream and poured ginger beer on it from a brown and opaque bottle labeled D. Stevenson, Glen Lane, Paisley. Donahue drank some of the ice cream float. Donahue's friend poured the remaining ginger beer into the tumbler, and a decomposed snail also floated out of the bottle. Donahue claimed that she felt ill from the sight, complaining of abdominal pain. She received emergency treatment and subsequently diagnosed with severe gastroenteritis and shock. The case of Donahue and Stevenson establishes three major legal principles. Number 1. It established that negligence is a tort. As the defendant has not purchased the ginger beer, she could not establish any contractual agreement with Stevenson, the ginger beer manufacturer. 2. The manufacturer has a duty of care to the final consumer. And finally, number 3, the neighbor principle, the rule that you must love thy neighbor, which becomes in law as you must not injure your neighbor.
Hi there. This lesson will be on tort law, specifically defamation. The other lesson would be tort law negligence. Now we're talking specifically of defamation, where someone has injured the reputation of another person, whether spoken, which is slander, or written, which is libel. Forgot for a moment. And so they will sue for damage to their reputation, economic damage, and then they have to prove on the balance of probabilities in civil law that what the defendant said about me or spoke about me has caused me X number of dollars harm, and they're suing for that money. And so you're trying to be compensated for people saying bad things about them, and that's what this lesson is for. Law negligence. So people who owe others a duty of care, a standard of care, and who have acted negligently so as to have caused the other person harm. And so we would discuss this in the idea that it's different from criminal law, where someone could be prosecuted for that harm. Now they're being sued civilly for that harm. So the plaintiff is suing the defendant to get paid back for the harm that the defendant has caused, whether purposefully or not. And so the whole lesson will be about teaching tort law and negligence.